Dreambender Chapter 27, told from the point of view of Jeremy. I moved toward Leif, and he tightened his grip. I watched, helpless, as Callie struggled. Her face was white, her eyes wide open. Leif's gaze swept around the room. Jeremy's gift is asking. Mine is saying no. You're about to make a mistake, all of you, but I won't let you. Dorothy said, Leif, don't do this. He shook his head. You've lost your will. I'm in charge now. Leif's anger was a weapon. I had a weapon, too. Why? I asked him. He snorted. Don't you get tired of questions? What are you going to do, Leif? Hurt Callie? Hurt us all? Maybe, he said. Maybe not. Then what? You think the fixers will back you up? What about the council? What about Dorothy? He glanced at her. She's weak. Dorothy watched him, concerned. Leif, this isn't the way to solve problems. We don't use violence, you know that. Jeremy wants change, said Leif. Maybe violence isn't so bad. Maybe it makes you strong. You don't believe that, she told him. I said, think about it, Leif. Can you pull this off? Are you really that good? Are you that smart? A drop of sweat ran down his forehead and into his eyes. He wiped it away. His hand was shaking. You always were the strongest, I said. You don't need violence. Maybe you need change. There's strength in that, isn't there? I had grown up with Leif. He'd been my best friend. I knew him as well as I knew myself. He wouldn't hurt Callie. Or would he? Squeezing harder, he took a step toward the door. Ah! A strange, primitive cry rang out. Leif looked around. What was that? A black shape loomed in the doorway. Light streamed in behind and around it. Leif staggered back. He had a familiar, haunted look on his face. It had been years since I'd seen that look, but I knew it at once. At night in the children's house, he used it to have nightmares. He would sweat and squirm and cry out. Sometimes I would go into his dream. The dark figure I saw then was the one bearing down on him today. The shape advanced. Arrgh! It was everything that Leif and his longing for control and power had ever feared. Mystery, defeat, death, nothingness. He feared those things today, and he had feared them as a child when he would wake up next to me screaming the word he screamed now. Boogie! Leif stumbled and lost his balance. Seizing the opportunity, I lunged forward, grabbed Callie, and yanked her from his grasp. As I did, the shape went hurtling past me, rammed into Leif, and lifted him off his feet. When I looked back, Leif was being held by his greatest fear. Boogie. Or was it Booker? How did he get here? Asked Callie. He must have followed us, said the woman. Off to one side, I noticed Dorothy staring at Booker. Do you know him? I asked. Booker? She said. He was the most remarkable dreambender I had ever met, the greatest of his generation. I thought I'd never see him again. I studied Booker. His hands were clenched, his dark brow was furrowed, and his mouth worked silently. What happened? I asked. How did he get like this? You mean mute? Said Dorothy. Wordless? He was born that way. Booker was a strange, brilliant child of dreambenders. He couldn't speak, but he showed great talent for dreambending. He worked mostly on big dreams. Then one day, something awful happened. He came across one of those rare, fragile dreams that are too delicate to bend. He kept trying, and the dream shattered. It went dark. I saw one of those, I said, remembering the dream that gave off green fog. What was it? How can a dream go dark? Dorothy shook her head sadly. Once in a great while, in a delicate surgery, a dream is destroyed and the dreamer is damaged. It always seems to be a teenager at that sensitive age when children become adults. Damaged? I asked. How? They lose their ability to dream. Worse than that, they lose their memories, sometimes part, sometimes all. They don't know who they are. They wander through the city. When that happens, dreambenders hurry to get them and take them to between, where they're trained to survive and live out their lives. That's terrible, I said. We're supposed to help people, not hurt them. Dorothy shook her head sadly. I could see pain in her expression along with something else that surprised me. It was shame. That's what happened to Sal and his friends, isn't it? I said. Dorothy nodded. Remember when I told you I went to the city on a special assignment? It was to get Sal. I thought about Sal's description of binders and suddenly knew where it had come from. Callie said, That's so sad. Yes, it is, says Dorothy. When that kind of damage occurs, it's awful, not just for the dreamer, but for the dreambender, too. In Booker's case, when he realized what he had done, he let out a loud bellow like the one we just heard. He paced the meadow, overcome with grief. Then one day he was gone. He just disappeared. We went out and sent search parties, but they never found him. We tried to track him through his dreams, but there weren't any. It was as if he had dropped off the face of the earth. Finally, we gave up. I always thought he had wandered away and died, maybe killed himself. Legends grew up around him. The children called him Boogie. Booker grunted and released Leif. Strong, proud, independent Leif stood there quivering, unable to stop staring at his nightmare. Dorothy approached Booger and placed his hand on her arm. "Are you all right? Do you understand?" Booker hesitated, then nodded. The woman took a cloth from her bag and wiped his forehead. I was picking berries in between one day, and Booker came to me distraught, clearly needing help. I took him home to the music place, and he lived there with me. He didn't talk. For a while, I thought he didn't dream. Then one night, I learned differently. I fell asleep and had a vivid, detailed dream. It was pictures. All pictures. No one spoke. They didn't have to. It was Booker telling his story without words. He showed me the meadow, the Dreambenders, his terrible accident, his escape to between. "That can't be right," Dorothy told her. "We adjust dreams. We don't create them." "But Booker does." "Why didn't we see his dreams or yours?" asked Dorothy. "We would have found out about the music place." "He didn't just create dreams," said the woman. "He learned how to cloak them. He hid his own dreams and mine so you wouldn't find the music place." Dorothy gazed at him in wonder. Booker, the greatest of his generation, had done things no Dreambender had ever done. Maybe the kinds of things Dorothy and the Watchers had hoped I would do. Callie says, "Does Booker live with you?" "Yes," the woman replied. "I think he finds the music place comforting. Every once in a while, though, he lets out that cry." Leif caught my eye. His voice was flat and low. "You're a fool, Jeremy. You've ruined everything." I shot him a sad smile. "We couldn't stop you, but your dreams did." Turning to Dorothy, I asked, "What happens next?" "I thought I knew," she said. "Now, I'm not sure. And maybe that's all right," I said.